going to get our fabrics ready to make the trees block. This is going to be really fun to do. It's an applique block, but we've got a little bit of piecing to do first. For the top part of the background, we're using these two fabrics. That's fabric 38 and fabric 35. And then for the bottom part of the background, we've got this yellow, fabric 33. So let's get those cut first. And we need a 2 3/4 inch strip, each of these, by about 23 inches. So if I need a 23-inch strip, I just use my cutting mat because it's just an approximate amount, as long as I've got at least 23. So that's 18 inches from there to there. And then add another 5. We'll be up to here. So if I fold my selvage up and then up again, take my pin out now. I'm just going to cut a little bit over the 2 3/4 so that I can tidy it up afterwards, making sure I've got enough for my 2 3/4 down there. And I'm going to cut up here and across, so I'll keep my rest of my fabric all nice. So now I'm going to go from my nice cut, do it on the right hand side. So that's 2 1/2, another 2 marks gets me to 2 3/4. So now I'll trim this off. And then I'm just going to take this selvage off as well. So with this, what we're doing is we're going to be strip piecing like we did before for the hopscotch, to make our background. So we need the same for the black, and I don't have any selvage on this piece. So the next step with these two is to sew them together down our length, which we'll do with a 1/4 inch seam. And then the yellow, we need 18 1/2 by 5 1/2. So again, if I fold that up, fold it in half. Half of my 18 1/2 is 9 1/4. So I need a bit more than that, don't I? Let's fold that down like that. That's about 9 1/4 to there. Again, you can do that on either side, and it's going to be cut 5 1/2 wide, so I'm allowing myself a little bit over the 5 1/2 again. Okay, so I'm going to turn it around, put the 5 1/2 on and neaten that long edge up. And then I'm going to put my 9 1/4 on the fold, which I've got on my left hand side. So if you're left-handed, you'll have the fold on your right. And then I'm going to cut there. Let's just push it right onto the fold. I don't want it to be short. So that's my 18 1/2 by 5 1/2 piece. So you can see, just looking at it on my mat, there's up to 18 there. So that extra bit is my extra 1/2 inch. So that's the bottom half of my block. So now I've got the white and the black strips, and I'm sewing those together down the length, and that's going to be ready to make the top half of our block. Now I've made this strip set, I'm going to open it and press So if I put the black on top, press and then press like that, the seam will be pressed towards the black fabric. I'm just going to square up the end, and then I'm going to cut 4 slices that are 5.5 inches. I'm going to put the 5.5 inch line on the edge of the fabric, and then I always line up a line here on the seam, and there's my first slice, 5.5 inches. So we need 4 of those in total. And now that I've got those slices cut, we're going to lay them like this, with the lighter fabric on our left, and then join these 3 seams here. So I'll now go and press these towards the darker fabric. And that should come out the same length as my yellow piece, which it will do. So make sure you pin both ends and then just pin in between. And we're going to sew these together. I've got the light fabric on the top left here. So that's my background made, and for the trees I've got fabric 25, fabric 8, fabric 31 and fabric 32. So they're for the main parts of the trees, and then for the tree trunk, fabric 10. Now for the tree applique you need about 5 by 8 inches of each one, and you've got the applique here to trace from. So from each of these, 5 inches by 8 inches, and it's just a case of working up your piece and trying to make sure that you're going to have pieces left for next time. So 5 inches is on the edge there. I come up here, there's 7.5, there's 8. So again, it doesn't have to be spot on accurate, but this is the area that you're going to need. For our tree trunk fabric, fabric 10, I'm going to cut a 3.5 by 2.5 rectangle. And we're actually going to cover that all with the steamer seam, and then cut our rectangles, tree trunks out from that. I've just cut out a piece of fusible web the same size as my fabric, and now I'm going to iron that on, and then we'll actually cut the pieces from this. So from my fusible web backed piece of fabric I need 4 pieces. They're going to be 3/4 inch by 2 1/4. So I'm going to trim the edge up, trim 2 edges, make them square. So our height of our tree trunks is 2 1/4. I could actually make it very slightly longer just to make sure it tucks under my trees. So I've actually made mine 2 3/8. And now we're going to go 3/4 inch. There's 1. So that's my tree trunks. Those are going to be placed on here before the trees go on, and the trees are centered on here. So if I fold this down, this seam is where the center of my tree trunk is going to go. So that means if I line that up at the edge of this and then put my ruler on the seam, I can use my pen to mark there. It's going to be the centre of my tree trunk, so that's my first one. The second one goes here. Third one is here. And the fourth one, I'll put that next to there, will be on here. So then I can take a tree trunk, take the backing paper off, and place it so that the centre of the tree trunk is on my chalk mark. And they're going to come right down to the bottom of the block, so these will get sewn into the seam. Okay, so now we're all ready to get the trees ready and plop them on top here. I'm tracing 4 of the tree shape onto my steamer seam, and then I'm trimming them out roughly, so leaving an edge outside the line that I drew. Then you want to take the backing paper off of the steamer seam and stick it onto the back of your fabric. Now, if you want to reduce the amount of steamer seam fusible web in your quilt, you can cut out the centre of this tree, but just be aware that you do sometimes get bobbles happening. So if you do that, just be careful when you're placing it down on the background. So don't forget to use your protection mat, applique mat or baking paper when you're pressing the steamer seam onto the back of the fabric. And then you're going to get your good scissors and cut out on the line. And then take the paper off the back and you've got the glue stuck to the back of the piece. And here are the trees all ready to go onto the background. I've just placed a ruler at the top and I've put my 1 1/4 inch line on the top of my background, and that's going to make sure that all my trees are level with each other. And then I can place them with the tip of the tree on the seam between the black and the white. And now you can see that there's a little bit of a gap in between them, so you've got a bit more room than you had with the ovals that we did before. So now we're just ironing and pressing those trees down onto the background, and then we'll be ready to stitch around them. And these are the colours I'm going to use for my applique. I've chosen the darker blue for my tree trunks to give it a bit of weight at the bottom, and then I've got my pretty colours, and the teal is going to go on both of those teal trees. So happy stitching and enjoy making the blocks this month, and I'll see you next time.